This is Gridiron Graduates, a weekly podcast covering all things football. Episode number 23, Out to the Woodshed. Recorded December 23rd, 2015.
Hey everybody out there, welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Graduates. I'm your man Bill Rossetti, and the winner of the 2015 Miss Universe is Miss Columbia. Yay! Wait, let me check. Oh no, I made a mistake. Sorry, it was Miss Philippines. I'm sorry. Joining me, as always, poor Steve Harvey. He took a beating. Joining me, as always, of course, is my good buddy, Mr. Ian Wharton, and that is not a mistake. That is 100% true and accurate, and always a pleasure to have him along. What's going on, bud?
Not much. I felt bad for poor Steve, although I feel like it might have been a rigged event and happening because, I mean, I don't know. I like Steve Harvey. I like the show, what's that, Family Feud? Yeah, I like that show. I think he's really a funny dude. So it was unfortunate, but, it made some good drama and it made a lot of people talk about it. So, and then he got re-signed too, I think, to do like the next 2 or 3 pageants. So
he did, yeah. I think this is the most we've talked about the Miss Universe contest in God knows how long. Like, I've never seen that contest get this much publicity.
Exactly.
I think in my entire life. I'll say this though, in defense of Steve Harvey, like they kind of like hung him out to dry a bit. You know, the fact that they let Miss Columbia parade around as the winner, and then he goes back on and was like, "Oh no, it's Miss Philippines." You would think somebody in the back would have quickly rushed up to him and said, No, like, this isn't right. Like, you said the wrong name.
Yeah, I was listening on the radio. They were talking about it a little bit, and they were saying how, I guess Steve always has like the earbuds in, and the earbud always they tell him, so he doesn't have to like read the cue cards, which is kind of weird. Why he wouldn't just read it anyways? But so I guess his like earpiece went out. So I don't know, but I mean, it was still a pretty easy card to read. So it's a weird situation, but
it was crazy.
Still felt a little bad for him.
Yeah, no, definitely. But hey, we live and we learn, and much respect to him for owning up to his mistake. He didn't joke or anything about it. He didn't brush it off. He full on took responsibility. So props to you, man. But enough about that. Let's actually talk some football here. Definitely the first thing I think we have to talk about has to be the Odell Beckham, Josh Norman UFC fight on Sunday. What a mess that game was. Not just Beckham and Norman, but Beckham going at it with Cortland Finnegan, and the refs just letting that game get completely out of hand. And the best part was the report saying that Dean Blandino actually called down to those refs to say, hey, you can eject some of these guys, just so you know. Like, don't be afraid to toss them. So that's a bad look on Terry McAuley. And then, of course, Odell Beckham gets the 1-game suspension. Josh Norman was fined $26,000. And the news dropping today that Odell Beckham lost his appeal, so he will be suspended for Sunday's game against the Vikings. Hey, by the way, Ron Jaworski, good job reporting. Well done. That was that was great. But yeah, just a crazy line of events from that game. What was your take from that?
It was really disgusting. I'm a big Odell Beckham fan. I like Josh Norman. I like what the Panthers do on defense. I like the swagger of the cornerbacks. I totally get that. But really on both sides, just a lot of unacceptable play. Just in general, just like the cheap shots, the hands to the face. I know that football is not for the weak of heart, and I understand that, testosterone filled, but at the end of the day, I mean, you're there to play football. And I just think that both sides, especially Beckham, but I feel like both sides just went a little too far as the after play contact the one play where Beckham turned around, led with his helmet, hit Norman in the helmet, whether or not he meant to hit him in the helmets, regardless, it's just dirty play. I mean, there's nowhere else to really, no way other to address it or to call it. I really hope that we don't see that again from either side. And Beckham's been a guy where he's been kind of chippy like that in other parts of his career. Like it's new to that level, but he's been that type of player. I think longer than most people realized, and that's not like the first time where he's been kind of immature and kind of just not really acceptable. So I wish that I believe the suspension was upheld. Correct? Did I see that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was
Sunday night against Minnesota.
Yeah, and I tweeted this during the game. I think that was fair. I think he should have been ejected, and I think I still think he should have been ejected and suspended a game, which is it's heavy punishment. But look, I mean, we don't have any place for that. No one needs to get unnecessarily hurt. Injuries are part of the game, but not when you're forcing injuries to happen or when you're playing to hurt somebody else. It's not what this league's about. It's not what competition's about. I was really disappointed in both parties.
Yeah. I mean, for one, Odell Beckham's lucky that Josh Norman didn't suffer a concussion in that game with some of the shots he took. And, I mean, I know it's been a few years ago, but, of course, NFL had the Bountygate scandal not too long ago, so something like this. Even a recent event, Concussion, the movie, comes out Friday. So if something would have happened to Josh Norman, then the NFL really would have looked bad. Things really would have gotten ugly. And boy, can you imagine the backlash that would have happened if they reversed the suspension and let Beckham play? Oh my goodness. It's like, you could throw all of that public safety crap out the window.
Oh yeah.
If they would have reversed the suspension, then the NFL could talk player safety till they're blue in the face, and no one's going to believe it because we would just come back to them and say, well, you let Odell Beckham do what he did, and you didn't even suspend him. I mean, and like you said, the referees in that game let that game get way out of control. It took them forever just to finally flag Beckham for a personal foul, which was ridiculous. I didn't get a chance to. I saw a little bit of the game on Sunday, but even just watching a little bit of the game, just watching that matchup, and it's a shame too because we wanted to see that matchup just because of how good these players were. Going in, it's Beckham versus Norman. What a great matchup this is going to be. Norman shutting down number one receivers, Beckham just going nuts, and we do end up watching that matchup, but we ended up watching it for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
All we kept noticing was, Beckham going after Norman. And Josh Norman's not innocent in this either, like you mentioned. He had some shots as well. But Beckham is definitely more at fault. And, of course, the story that, Beckham apparently felt threatened because the Panthers supposedly brought a bat to the field or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's silly.
Yeah,
it just sounds like excuses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. If he felt threatened, okay. That doesn't excuse what he did on the field. There's numerous other ways.
It's 3 quarters later. I mean,
yeah,
there's no bats on the playing field at that point. So, and it was interesting too because I went back and watched it on Coach's film, and I charted it. And I don't have the numbers here with me, but from a coverage productivity standpoint, and for people that aren't familiar with that work, I chart cornerbacks, every single route, every single man route that they face. I see whether they win or lose that route at the critical points of the route. So most specifically when the ball should be going to them. And I chart wins and losses. And, if you're interested in seeing more of that, you can definitely check out either my Twitter feed or draftcentric.weebly.com. I've got all the 2014 data I was able to get through on there. But so I looked at that matchup, and, man, Odell Beckham was killing Norman. I mean, and I don't know if maybe that had something to do with it, where Beckham he had to drop, obviously, for the touchdown early. So that was an issue. But there were times where Manning wasn't either able to hit that part in his progressions, or he just didn't get the ball out in time to get it out to Beckham. But Beckham was beating Norman pretty badly throughout the day, and maybe that was part of his frustration. But ultimately, like you said, I mean, there's just no place for it.
Yeah, so in the end, good on the NFL for upholding the suspension, but good on Beckham, too, for apologizing. It was kind of odd that he apologized twice. I mean, once would have been fine, but, at least he, owned up to his mistake. He knew he was in the wrong. But as far as now on the field, this really hurts the Giants, obviously, especially going to what's essentially a must-win game against the Vikings on Sunday night. Even with Beckham, this is still an erratic Giants team, especially on defense. Now they got to face Teddy Bridgewater in what's probably going to be a very cold game, because you're talking, outdoor stadium in Minnesota in prime time. So weather's probably going to be a factor. I mean, obviously, New York's a little bit used to the cold weather because, it does get cold this time of year in New York. Although, right now, here in the Northeast, it's like, my goodness, this crazy weather. I mean, it's going to be in the 60s tomorrow. It's like, my goodness. But, yeah, so they're probably used to the cold a little bit. But without Beckham, that's a major drop-off, I think, for the Giants offense. Because now, obviously, Ruben Randall has to step up. Hakeem Nicks is going to get his chance to shine again. Watching that game, too, I almost forgot Hakeem Nicks was back with the Giants, as crazy as that sounds. I was like, you see a couple throws to Nicks, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right, Hakeem Nicks re-signed with the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of surprising when that happened. I'm kind of actually surprised that he was on the free agent market for so long, too. Like, this was a guy I know he hasn't done much in the last couple of years, but, like, it wasn't that long ago where he was, like, a regular player for the Giants. And, I mean, I know he didn't do a ton with the Colts, but it's just really interesting to see how those careers kind of arc sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'll definitely see how the Giants fare now on Sunday night. Should be quite interesting as they try to keep their maybe slim playoff hopes alive, though, because at this point they need a lot of help to get into the playoffs. And we'll get to the playoff picture in a little bit. But I want to move on to another subject, a little more positive. I think this one is Charles Woodson announced his retirement this week after, I think, his 18th season, I believe, in the league.
I think so, yeah.
And the timing is interesting too, because the time he announces his retirement on the same week that the Raiders are preparing for their final home game of the season. So it'll be Woodson's final game in front of his home crowd, and potentially the Raiders' final game in Oakland, period.
Yeah.
Which, and funnily enough, it's against the Chargers, the team they may be sharing a Los Angeles stadium with. Yeah. So over under, they're going to be talking about that all throughout the game. Oh, right. These two teams, longtime rivals, now they might share a stadium in 2016. What do you think about that? Well, they're going to talk that out the wazoo on Thursday night. And of course, if you're listening tonight, the game's tomorrow night. If you're listening on Thursday, game's tonight. And if you're listening after Thursday, well, the game's already happened. So,
yeah, man. I mean, Woodson's one of those guys for me. Like, I'm not one of those. Like, I don't have a lot of favorite players. I don't have a lot of dudes that I really enjoy watching. I mean, I like watching every player play, in a sense. But there's not a lot of guys where I could just sit down and watch all day and just be in awe of what they do. And Charles Woodson, for me, is one of those guys. He's a big reason why. He and among a few others, a big reason why I love defensive back play, because the guys that play the position as well as people like he do, they're rare. They're rare impact players. It's incredible what he's accomplished throughout his career, which as an Ohio State guy, saying that about a Michigan guy, it's not ideal. I sure wish he was a Buckeye. So I'd like him even more, but He's one of my favorite players, and I'm sad to see him retire already. I was hoping he'd be able to play a couple more years. Physically, he could do it. He was still a top 7 safety in the NFL. I like to joke about him being just an immortal. He's just a god amongst men. At his age, to be able to play as well as he does and accomplish the things on the field that he's able to do, just incredible. And it's sad to see him go. Long career, successful everywhere he went. Extremely successful after the age of 30. I think 2/3 of his career interceptions came after he hit 30 years old, which, I mean, it is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So,
yes,
really happy I got to watch him. Really looking forward to seeing what Oakland does next to try to replace him. Obviously, you're not really replacing a guy like that, but it's a shame that we won't be able to see him, any further. But I'm going to be watching this week. That's for sure. I'm definitely going to want to watch him face off against another great free safety on the other side of the field, Eric Weddle, who's probably in the same boat, probably his last game with San Diego. So maybe a whole lot of last games for very interesting angles this week in that matchup.
Yeah, emotions are probably going to be running very high, similar to what we saw last week when the Chargers hosted Miami. Eric Weddle laying at midfield right on the Chargers logo, kind of soaking it all in. So it just kind of shows how much these cities mean to these players.
Yep.
So we'll see if something like that happens tomorrow in Oakland. So yeah, a lot of storylines for this final Thursday game of the season. But yeah, Woodson, when we as fans get into watching this sport, we always look at, some of us like to look at the history of the game and, see some of the players that made the game what it is today and appreciate what they did. But it's always nice to actually watch a player, be great and watch him be so good at what he does as he's doing it and kind of like grow with him and get to follow his career as it's following on. So, it was real fun to watch Charles Woodson as a player, first as a corner, and then, of course, he made the whole, old, when cornerbacks get old, they turn into safeties. That's when they can't play anymore. Well, Woodson kind of proved that wrong. He made the switch to safety, and he was still a very, very good player. And at least for him, he kind of, it was nice for him to kind of get to go back home, as it were. Started in Oakland, went to Green Bay, gets to finish his career in Oakland. So, yeah, I agree with you. He's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. And watching the game tomorrow is going to be very fun to watch, for sure, to see, just to see how Oakland honors him in his final game. Let's move on. I want to talk, and we've talked about this team many times, but the chances that this is going to happen are starting to get better and better. I figured we'll talk about this quick and then move on to the playoff picture. Going back to the Carolina Panthers, they did, despite all the hoopla with Beckham and Norman, they did defeat the New York Giants 38-35 and are now 14-0 and are essentially one win away from the number 1 seed of the NFC. They take on the Falcons this week, and then they've got the Buccaneers. They're going to play their starters this week because they're still playing for something. The question is, if they get to 15-0 and lock up the number 1 seed, do they play their starters in week 17 against the Buccaneers? So overall, will they finish 16-0? Can they do it?
Well, I mean, their schedule's favoring it, and I think Jameis and the Buccaneers, I wouldn't be surprised if they can pull the upset week 17. But boy, it's hard to pick against this Panthers team. And they're playing such good football, and I don't want to take much away from what they've done. What they've done is extremely impressive. What they've done is obviously incredibly rare. Even if they were to lose one of these last 2 weeks, still an incredible regular season. But they have faced a lot of bad teams this year. They faced the AFC South, the NFC East, and then of course their own division, the NFC South. So a lot of bad teams on their schedule, and credit them for taking advantage. They've won some close games as well. As good as their regular season is, man, I don't think this is the best team even in the NFC. I think the Arizona Cardinals are.
I agree.
And maybe that's just because the Cardinals are so good. Maybe that's why I say that, but it wouldn't surprise me to see the Panthers do well in the playoffs. But by the way, don't sleep on the Seattle Seahawks. I know that we'll get to them here in a little bit, but as I look around the NFC landscape, I look at the Panthers and I'm saying, yeah, I'm impressed, but am I sold on them? No, not when I'm looking at the competition in the conference.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Like I do think they can get to 16-0, but I've said it many times, and until I'm proven wrong, I'm going to keep saying this. I don't know if the way they are playing is going to hold up in the playoffs. Especially if they run into a team like Arizona or even a Seattle earlier in the playoffs. It's there's going to be a lot of good teams in the NFC playoffs, minus the NFC East champion, but so it's not going to be a walk in the park for the Panthers. Even with home field advantage, it's still going to be a tough road for them to get to the Super Bowl. But I do think they can get to 16-0, and then it's just a matter of getting that rest during Wild Card Week, and then we'll see who they draw in the divisional round. By the way, wow, Northern Illinois got smoked. Did you see that score?
No, I didn't. What was the score of that one?
Boise State 55, Northern Illinois 7.
Oh my goodness.
Yikes.
Yeah, these bowl games, I think they've been... I actually haven't caught any of them, unfortunately, yet. I'm downloading a lot of them to a hard drive now, and as they go on, since I'm been a little busy, and the timing of these bowl games is weird. I hadn't realized that there's actually bowl games every weeknight, which is weird. It's nice. It's a good thing. It just hasn't been good for my schedule personally. But no, I've got this Bowling Green game on right now against where they're facing Georgia Southern. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting matchup.
Yeah, because I was just checking on Instagram here, and that's what came up from CBS Sports, and then the stat here: 654 yards of offense. My goodness,
that's just a beatdown.
Yes, wow.
As Kirk Herbstreit used to say in NCAA football, padding stats and running up the score.
There you go. Yep, no doubt about it. Boy, that was a fun game series. I still have NCAA 06 and NCAA 11, the one with Tim Tebow on the cover. So those are always fun, especially when you download the rosters. Oh yeah, for sure. I kept my Xbox 360 just for NCAA 14, which I still play on occasion. When I do play games, I try to play that as much as I can. I love that game. Yeah, it was definitely a real good series. And I have to say too, I caught a little bit of my favorite bowl game, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I just love watching the Smurf turf. It's just so cool. If you like that one, have you seen the red turf that Eastern Washington has? Yes. Isn't that crazy? Nice too. I don't know if I'd say nice. I like it, but it kind of hurts the eyes. It's different for sure, but yeah, it's interesting to say for sure. Hey, whatever works though, I guess. But yeah, so okay, let's move on now to the playoff picture with 2 weeks to go. God, I just can't believe we're saying this. Yeah, seems just unbelievable. 2 weeks to go. Yeah. In the regular season, there's already week 16. We'll start in the NFC. We were just kind of talking about the NFC, so we'll continue there. So obviously Carolina #1 right now at 14-0. Cardinals second at 12-2. Then you've got the Packers leading the North at 10-4. Redskins lead the East at 7-7. Seahawks currently the 5 seed at 9-5, and the Vikings holding down the 6 seed at 9-5. The only team right now that can catch Minnesota in the wild card is Atlanta, and they need a lot of help. They need to win out. They need Minnesota to lose out, and they need Seattle to lose out. Because
Yep, that's not happening.
no, it is not, especially with the fact that Seattle plays St. Louis this week.
Yeah, there's just too much they need.
Yeah.
And I mean, just too big of a talent difference too between those teams.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember, did the Falcons play the Vikings this year or no?
I don't believe it.
I can't remember offhand, but I know the only way, because the only way Atlanta can get in is they need a 3-way tie, actually, with the Vikings and Seahawks, because then Atlanta would actually be the 5 seed in that scenario, I believe. I'm actually on the ESPN playoff machine as we speak. I love this thing, though. It's so fun. And I'm going to just play around with it right quick just to see. Because I'm on this like all the time. It's like so fun to kind of play around and
the interesting part with the NFC wild card picture, and really the only position that isn't locked in is the Vikings and Packers.
Yeah.
So they play Week 17 at Lambeau Field. If the Packers lose this week and the Vikings win, then all the marbles are on the table.
Actually, I
think it is either way. Yeah, it is actually.
Yeah, actually, as long as Minnesota beats the Giants this week, that game in Week 17 will be for the North title.
Yeah,
because
that's right. So.
Even if they tie at 11-5, like say they both win this week and then Minnesota beats Green Bay, Minnesota would beat Green Bay on division record. So.
That's right. So this will be really interesting. In general, Week 17 is going to be a very low-key week, unless if some really crazy stuff happens this week.
Yeah.
Which is possible, but if everything goes according to plan, Week 17 may be pretty quiet for the draft picture. But that may be the big game. That might be the big game of next week, and obviously that's going to greatly affect home field advantage.
Absolutely. And then, of course, in the NFC East, obviously Washington leads. They can clinch the East with a win over the Eagles. The Eagles need to win out.
Win out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they have to win both. They could beat the Redskins and then lose to the Giants, but then they'd also need the Redskins to lose to the Cowboys, because then that would create a 3-way tie for the NFC East. But yeah, the easy way for the Eagles to get into the playoffs would be winning both of their final games. And the Giants, we kind of mentioned this before, they're still alive for the division, but they have to win out, and they need the Redskins to lose out, which means they need the insert quarterback here led Dallas Cowboys to beat Washington in Week 17. Good luck with that.
It's possible, but yeah, hard to have any faith in that happening.
Yeah.
Especially Washington's playing some good football right now.
They are. As crazy as that sounds, it's hard to believe we're talking about them like this, but yeah, now that they have stability at quarterback with Kirk Cousins,
yep,
they're playing pretty decent. Sitting at 7-7, chance to win the division. It's like, who'd have saw that coming?
It's gonna be funny too when the Redskins give Kirk Cousins like $40 million guaranteed this offseason.
Oh, typical Washington.
And it's tough timing for them too, because it's one of those things where it's like he's clearly better than what they've had in the last even decade and a half or so. Besides Robert Griffin's 2012 season, he's been their best quarterback in that time frame. But I mean, it's still he's still very limited, and the issue is that he's doing that with a great surrounding cast. Their running game isn't very good right now. It's almost non-existent some weeks, but they still have 3 quality receivers in Deshaun Jackson, Jordan Reed, and Pierre Garçon, and they even have a couple other guys outside of those 3. So, I mean, end of the day, I think that Jay Gruden's done a great job. Yes, Kirk Cousins has done a nice job of improving. He's not making those back-breaking plays, but he's just another Alex Smith. That's what it really boils down to. I would not be investing into him. I would maybe franchise tag him, draft a replacement, and then at the end of 2016, I think that's where you just kind of let Kirk Cousins go, because he's not the guy. He's not a guy you're going to win a Super Bowl with. And that's what it really boils down to. I mean, I'm not the biggest Kirk Cousins guy, admittedly, and I wasn't out of college. But to me, he's still that same guy. He's just now hitting like his peak of what he can be, and that's good enough to win against bad teams, but it's not good enough to win against playoff teams.
Yeah, which is why whoever wins that NFC East is in big trouble, because in all likelihood they're going to host Seattle in that first game. So
they'll get stomped.
Yes, that's
no matter who it is.
Yeah. And that's probably going to be the Saturday night game, because #NFC East. They love putting those East teams in prime time, so that'll probably it'll be an ugly Saturday night game, but that's what it is. So it's probably going to end up Carolina gets the 1, Arizona the 2, Green Bay, Washington, Seattle, Minnesota. So essentially what it is now is probably what it's going to be. So not a whole lot of drama in these final 2 weeks, unless of course something crazy happens, which is still possible, but we'll see. Switching gears to the AFC, also not a whole lot of drama. So in a way it kind of makes the rest of this NFL season, I don't want to say boring, but a little anticlimactic.
Yeah.
A lot of spots are already kind of set. New England. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Like, hey, how you doing? New England, the top seed right now, 12-2. If they beat the Jets, they are the number 1 seed. Cincinnati at 11-3. AJ McCarron played pretty decent against San Francisco, so we'll see how they do this week against the team right behind them, Denver, the reeling Denver Broncos after their blown win over Pittsburgh. But Denver still leads the West at 10-4. And then Houston, the Brandon Weeden-led Houston Texans, with the come-from-behind victory on Sunday to beat the Colts and take control of the AFC South. They are the 4 seed right now at 7-7. Wild cards right now are the Chiefs at 9-5 and the Steelers at 9-5. The only team outside of those two that can catch a wild card would be the Jets. They need to essentially win out, which means they have to beat the Patriots. Good luck with that. And they're going to need one of Pittsburgh or Kansas City to lose one of their final 2 games. Well, Pittsburgh closes with Cleveland and Baltimore and Cleveland. Kansas City closes with Cleveland and Oakland. It's not looking good for the Jets.
No, and it's possible, and it's actually a shame, because they're a good team, and what they've been able to accomplish this year, first year head coach, and Todd Bowles, who I'm a big fan of, it is nothing to sneeze at. It's nothing to sneeze at.
Absolutely.
But they need a lot of help, and it's hard to, when you face a good division like the AFC East, you've got to be on your game, and you've got to steal some divisional games, because that's what happens for teams like Pittsburgh, is they're able to steal 2 games. And actually, they've been able to steal 4 games this year. So you're fighting an uphill battle there. You're fighting a battle where, they're basically gifted 3 or 4 wins against teams like the Browns and Ravens. And you're facing, the Jets only can count on basically 1 or 2 wins. They usually split a game with the Bills, and they usually split the game with the Dolphins. They were able to get 2 from the Dolphins this year. And then they play the Bills again. So, maybe that ends up working out that way, but it's a little bit different for them. And obviously the Patriots looming, that's going to be a tough game. Even if the Patriots aren't the same team that they were a couple months ago because of injuries, it's still a tough team. Mm-hmm. Still a team that I'm not going to want to face. And so, they've got a chance. They've got a chance. They're a good team. Again, it wouldn't be shocking to me it's just hard with 2 weeks to go to need help to reach the playoffs. Far, far from ideal.
Mm-hmm. And then over in the AFC South, it is just like the NFC East. The South is actually still a 3-horse race. As crazy as it sounds, the Jacksonville Jaguars are still mathematically alive.
It's unbelievable.
But it is. It's
because most teams are out by now. I mean, there's not many teams left in this race on each side. I think it's just looking at my.
I think it's 9-9 on each side now.
Yeah. Just looking at my Bleacher Report here, nifty little graphic. There's really just 3 teams in the hunt, and that's it. And I mean, like you said, the Jaguars and Giants can almost be ruled out at this point.
Yeah.
And the Eagles and Colts are just divisional teams.
Yep.
And Falcons are a very, very long shot. So realistically, you're talking the Colts for their division, the Eagles and Giants for their division, and the Jets. Only one team really fighting for the wild card at this point. So it's a very unique position to be in this time of year.
But yeah, just imagine if the Jaguars actually sneak into the playoffs at 7-9. Can you imagine the reaction to that? And I think I kind of figured it out. They obviously have to win out because they're 2 games back with 2 to play. So obviously they have to win out. Now, lucky for them, they do play Houston in Week 17. So they will need. So that helps them a little bit. You know, they could take care of their business there. But this week, obviously, they need to beat New Orleans, which is possible because Drew Brees is injured. They have to beat New Orleans, but they need Houston to somehow lose to Tennessee, who, by the way, will not have Marcus Mariota this week. And they also need the Colts to lose to Tennessee in Week 17. So it's possible, but I certainly wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, it's tough to be overly confident there.
Yeah, so like you said, outside the teams that are the current 12 playoff teams, realistically, you're really only looking at Philadelphia, Indianapolis, and then maybe the 2 New York teams. And even Indy, in that sense, they need some help too, because now Houston, Houston's obviously in control now with the division record. Because if Houston wins, they've just about clinched the division. They can't completely clinch with just a win. They do need a little bit of help if they want to clinch this week. And I know one of the scenarios involves them clinching the strength of victory over the Colts, which I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think they can do it if Cincy wins, and if something like New Orleans wins, or Pittsburgh wins, or Baltimore, or something like that. It's like some combination of teams winning to help the Texans. They can certainly also get in if the Colts lose, and the Colts are at Miami this week. So lots of because I'm trying to bring up the scenarios right now just to kind of see where we're at as far as what the Colts, or excuse me, what the Texans need to clinch strength of victory. I'm sorry for the listeners out there. I'm sorry for the stuttering.
You're good. So it's that was an ugly game last week between the Colts and the Texans, and it's going to be like the NFC matchup, like you mentioned for the NFC East. The AFC South is just so bad. It's going to be one of those games where, or it's going to be one of those situations where they're going to get into the playoffs, and literally, it's probably going to be just one of the ugliest games you can imagine for a playoff game, unfortunately. And I guess we'll see what the matchup ends up being, because obviously the seeding is still up in the air, but that's not going to be an attractive game, and quite frankly, unless if Andrew Luck comes back, and the Colts end up making it into the playoffs, it's not going to be a game that I'm going to even really want to watch.
So looking at what we think's going to happen in the AFC, I think it's safe to say we both think New England gets the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Cincy-Denver game, though, this week is obviously very huge. The Bengals can clinch a first-round bye if they win. Denver would be in control for the 2 seed, but they would not completely clinch yet. Because they can actually still be caught by Kansas City for the West. I think Cincinnati beats Denver this week, because I think Denver's going to be reeling a bit after last week. And Osweiler's struggling. So I think the Bengals can win, get the 2 seed, and then I think Kansas City wins their final 2 games and wins the AFC West and gets the 3 seed and faces Denver in the wild card round, while Pittsburgh would go to Houston.
Oh, wow.
That's how I see the AFC playoffs shaping up right now.
It'd be kind of funny if Houston and Denver end up playing, and Denver ends up playing Peyton Manning, which I think is the right move, by the way. If he's healthy, I think Peyton Manning's the guy that should be playing.
Yeah.
Brock Osweiler just hasn't done anything to impress me. But it'd be kind of funny because there was word before the season that Houston was possibly looking into trading for Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just kind of be a little funny story, because I know that way back when he had hit the free agency market, that Houston was a team he was interested in, and then they were like, no, we're not interested. We're happy with Matt Schaub. So, losing franchise decision.
Yep. Because then, of course, Denver goes on a roll the first couple seasons with Peyton. Houston, was that the season? That was the season Houston earned the number 1 pick, I believe, too, wasn't it?
After he went there?
That was because that was the 2012 season. And then
No, because they had the.
Clowney was 2014 drafted, so it was 2013. That's right. I'm sorry.
Yep. But still, though, I mean, it would have changed the course of the franchise for sure. So it's one of those things where, you had the chance to get, and I understand, because, end of the day, no one knew what he was coming off that surgery.
Yeah.
So that changes everything. It really does.
Mm-hmm. But hey, it's still pretty crazy, because I think we both had Houston pegged around 8-8, so record-wise they're kind of around where we expected them to be.
Yep.
We obviously just didn't think they'd be sitting here likely now as division champions.
Yeah.
And I do think they win out, so I think they get to 9-7. At least I don't think we'll see a losing record in the playoffs. And I know people were worried about that, but I do think the worst record we'll see in the playoffs is 8-8. Because I think Houston wins out to get to 9-7, and I actually think Washington wins out to get to 9-7. So I think 9-7 will actually be the worst record.
It's looking that way. We've seen, like you said, a little bit of a recent surge here in quality of play, which is actually really nice.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want bad teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, it's going to be nice to not have to talk again about, a winning record or a losing record in the playoffs, and then everyone will be up in arms, wanting the playoffs structure to change. It's like, no, the system's fine the way it is, as far as like how they see the teams. Like, you should be rewarded a bit for winning your division. Like, does it suck when a losing record wins the division and gets into the playoffs? Yeah, but it's bound to happen.
Right. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's bound to happen. Like, it's we've seen an uptick of it in recent history. We saw it happened in 2010, and then with the Seahawks, and then of course last year with the Bengals. And I'm trying to think if it happened sometime in between, but I definitely remember those two.
Only negative part I think that happens is when, let's say, the Jets, Steelers, and Chiefs all go 11-5.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of unfortunate that a team would miss that. But
you're right. Yeah, that's the downside of that too. Like, a bad record getting in is going to push a good record out, because it's very possible that an 11-win Jets team is going to miss the playoffs. I think we're likely going to see a 10-win team again miss the playoffs, like we saw last season with the Eagles. But it's definitely very rare and certainly very unfortunate for an 11-win team to miss the playoffs. But again, that's just the nature of the beast. It happens. We roll with it. Personally, I'm still in favor, though, of expanding the playoffs to 14. There hasn't been much talk about that recently, but when there was talk about it, I was in favor of it. I'd have been fine with, only giving the top seed a first-round bye, because then that adds even more value to it. Instead of just playing for, say, the 2 seed and a first-round bye now, if you actually want to fight for that 1 seed. Because, if you only get the 2nd seed, you'd be playing now on that first weekend against the 7th seed. And, I mean, in the AFC, obviously, it'd be good. You'd have the Jets make the playoffs. NFC, of course, if there were 7 playoff teams, right now you'd be looking at 7-7 Atlanta as the 7th seed, having to go to Arizona. But, even still, I even did a little research into that, before the 2014 season, actually, looking at my notes on my iPad. So this wasn't counting, like, the 2014 season when I did this research, but I researched, like, what the records of the 7 seeds would have been since realignment in 2002. And I came up with the 11-5 team, which was the Patriots, in 2008, the year, of course, Tom Brady got injured. 6 teams, you would have had 6 teams at 10-6 would have made the playoffs as a 7 seed. 11 teams at 9-7, and 6 teams at 8-8. And that would have been the worst record. Even going back to realignment, even if we had 7 playoff teams in each conference all those years, we still wouldn't have had a 7-9 wildcard team.
Jeez.
And I don't know offhand what the 7 seeds would have been last. I think Philly would have been 7th last year, 10-6. And AFC, I can't remember, but I'm gonna say it was probably like either 8-8 or 9-7. So
it's definitely a lot to consider for the competition committee. Again, on one hand, I like the divisional play. I like that rewards teams. There's obviously the history of it, but yeah, it really does stink when you're losing out on a good team to a worse team, especially one where it's going to make that one game potentially unwatchable.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, it doesn't happen too much. So,
but who knows? They could also be the team that goes on that run. I mean, you look at those losing records that got in. Seattle, of course, had the big upset in New Orleans, including, of course, the Marshawn Lynch run. I'm sure we all know what play I'm talking about.
I think he's still running and causing earthquakes.
Yeah, I think he's still carrying that Saints team.
Yep. Yep. Still breaking those tackles.
And I could still picture what's his name, the guy that used to do all the Notre Dame games, with his call when he was calling that Marshawn Lynch run. But then, of course, obviously people were in an upheaval that they got to host the playoff game. But hey, again, that's what happens. 7-9 team hosting an 11-5 team. And then, of course, last year with the Panthers. Now, obviously, the Panthers got a bit of an easy draw, too, because they faced a Cardinals team that was down to their 3rd quarterback.
Yeah.
So they got a bit lucky there. Well, if Palmer didn't get hurt, Arizona, I don't even think even plays in that wild card game. They probably would have won the division. But then Carolina probably would have played Seattle in that first game. So, but things. That's how things go, I guess. And I guess the thing they'd have to consider too, if they want to expand the playoffs, would be. I mean, obviously they'd be doing it for the money because they know they can eke out a lot more money with 2 extra playoff games. And then it'd be a matter of how do you schedule the 6 playoff games. I mean, for me, it's pretty easy. You play 3 games on Saturday, and you play 3 games on Sunday. Easy. And then...
Yeah, and that would make sense.
Yeah, you could have... similar to like the regular seasons... Similar to the regular season schedule. You can have a game at 1 o'clock, a game at, say, 4:30, and a game at 8 on Saturday and Sunday. So that wouldn't be too much of a problem. So nothing wrong with an extra primetime playoff game.
No, and you can make like a whole weekend event, which is actually kind of a cool idea.
Yeah.
Where you own the whole weekend, especially with college football gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. You start at 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and you have like a 7 o'clock game on both days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that actually be a pretty good idea.
And we'll see if the NFL ever comes back around to it, and if they ever come back around to the 18-game schedule. But obviously that's a discussion for later on in the future.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was the talk about the playoff picture. I guess we'll kind of flip the script a little bit, and we'll go to the other end of the spectrum, and we'll talk about the race for the pick in the draft, which at this point has turned into a 2-horse race between the Titans and the Browns, the only team sitting at 3-11. And then you've got 4 teams at 4-10, the Ravens, the Chargers, the Cowboys, and the 49ers. So those are likely the 6 teams that are in play for that number 1 pick, because Jacksonville might still be alive if they lose out, but they would also need Tennessee to win out and Cleveland win out, so that's obviously not going to happen. So we'll focus on the 2-3 win teams, the Titans and the Browns. Titans, we mentioned they have Houston this week, and they've got Indy to close. The Browns, they've got Kansas City, and they've got Pittsburgh. So it's looking like they're both going to lose their last 2 games. Tennessee right now has a big lead as far as strength of schedule goes. So the Titans are in pretty good shape to get that number 1 pick in the draft. I guess I'll ask, who would you say, looking at the race, like how do you expect it to play out, and who do you think would need that number 1 pick more, Tennessee or Cleveland?
I think it plays out, as far as, losses and stuff, I think both teams probably lose out. I don't see either team picking up a W here to close out the season. So then it comes down to, strength of schedule and such. As far as who needs it more, I think the Browns need it more. Just in terms of where that franchise is. Tennessee has a little bit more positivity. They're going to be looking for a new coach. I think the Browns end up sticking with what they've got. And I don't think that they're going to be looking for a quarterback right away. I could be wrong on that. And maybe they'll end up going with, Lynch or Goff or Cook. Excuse me. And, if that's the case, then that maybe changes the story a little bit. But I think maybe they should give, and as much as I like Jared Goff especially, I think they should probably give Manziel the offseason, and if he doesn't mess up, enter 2016 with him as a starter and see what they've got with him, and then then reevaluate the position. I think Goff's going to be an above-average quarterback, which to me is well worth the number 1 pick in the draft. But if I'm the Browns, I'm probably doing the plan I was talking about, where you're taking Joey Bosa, actually number 1 or number 2. And the reason why I think the Browns could use the number 1 pick more is that you want to ensure that you're getting Bosa if I'm the Browns. Because the Titans may take Tunsil, but they also can definitely use a guy like Joey Bosa. And we know that they're not going to take a quarterback. So it just kind of depends where the Browns want to go. I mean, if the Browns want to take a quarterback, they might have to worry about a team jumping them to go to number 1 if they really want, if someone else wants a quarterback. Some people talk about, well, there's not a quarterback worth it this year. I call baloney on that. I don't agree with that. I'm not a top 5, top 10 guy for Paxton Lynch, but I am a fan of Paxton Lynch. And ultimately, if you see a guy that can be an above-average quarterback in the next 5 to 6 years, I mean, that's worth a top 5 pick. It's very difficult to find those type of players. So if I'm the Browns, I do whatever it takes to get that number 1 pick. Even if you trade it, even if you use it, that's a franchise that really needs the positivity. Like I said before, the Titans have Marcus Mariota, so they have some shredded positivity. They have a new coach that's going to be coming in for sure. So there's optimism there. There's reason for hope that things get better. The Browns are not that way. The Browns don't really have that hope of optimism around the team, and I think that they need that. I think the number 1 pick is the path to really improving.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said about the quarterbacks, we just saw that with Jacksonville. I don't think a lot of people felt Blake Bortles was worth the 3rd overall pick, but clearly Jacksonville did, and so far it's been working out okay for them. So they kind of have the last laugh so far, almost 2 seasons into the project. But yeah, if Tennessee gets that number 1 pick, there's certainly a couple ways they can go. Tunsil to improve the offensive line. Bosa next to Jarrell Casey would make a pretty nice defensive line. Bosa next to Danny Shelton would be a very nice D-line there in Cleveland, too. So
Yep.
I'd be very curious which way they go. But yeah, Cleveland at this point is probably going to need Tennessee to somehow win one of their last 2 games to get the number 1 pick. Because like I said, it looks like there's a huge gap right now as far as strength of schedule goes between the 2 teams. Even if Tennessee and Cleveland both win a game, I think Tennessee is still in good shape, because then the 4 teams after them are even higher in strength of schedule than Tennessee. So Tennessee's in pretty good position right now to get that top pick, and see what they can do with it. By the way, your Dolphins right now sit at number 8 in the pecking order.
Yeah, I know there's a chance they can get to the top 5. I hope they make it there so that they can, have a chance to get Joey Bosa. If there's any chance they can get Joey Bosa, I would be absolutely thrilled. But I think even if they're in like that 6 to 8 range, I think they'll still get a pretty good player, especially at the linebacker position, which would be tremendous.
Yeah, just kind of run through right now. The top 10 right now would be Tennessee, Cleveland, Baltimore, San Diego, Dallas, San Francisco, Jacksonville, Miami, New Orleans, Detroit. Detroit would be 10th. And it would be Chicago, Tampa Bay, the New York Giants, Indianapolis, Oakland, Philadelphia, Buffalo, St. Louis, Atlanta, and the Jets. And another showing of, this is kind of the downside, too, of all this mediocrity for some of these teams. You have some of these teams with bad records, and they're still middle of the draft order right now. I mean, looking at the Rams, 6-8. 18th pick right now at 6-8.
Wow.
Usually a team's like 8-8, maybe even 9-7 sometimes, sitting in like that 16 to 19 range. But right now you've got, Philly, Buffalo, and St. Louis, 16, 17, and 18. They're at 6-8. So it's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like the NFL picture this year. I mean, it took around 14 weeks for teams to really start getting eliminated from the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And then a vast majority of teams were just eliminated this past week.
Yeah.
In one fell swoop. I mean, there's a small handful of really good teams in the NFL, and the rest of teams are just kind of like average to below average.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just kind of a sad state of the NFL. I mean, it's been a rough season, honestly, I think, as far as like the product.
Yeah.
But I mean, it kept teams alive for most of the season, and now we're down to really just two or three,
Mm-hmm.
really teams with
outside.
a legitimate, like maybe one team with a legitimate, and then maybe like two or three total that are hoping and praying that they can win matchups this week.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just a really weird place for the NFL currently.
Yeah, because they said entering this week we had like 25 teams still alive, which was tied for the fourth most teams alive with 3 weeks left in the season. So, and again, that point, that's because of the fact that so many teams were hovering around 500. A lot of teams that were like 6-6, 6-7, or like 6-7, 5-8, something like that. And of course, when you had teams that were like 5-8 and still alive for a division title, that kind of helps too. But yeah, so a lot of top heavy teams and then a lot of mediocrity in the middle of the league. But we'll see how it plays out. Again, hard to believe it's week 16 already. We're having the final Thursday game of the season, the final Saturday game, the final Monday game. Because of course week 17 is all on Sunday. And I think we'll end it on this topic too. Because so much of the playoff picture is seemingly in focus and almost set, what the heck is the NFL going to do week 17 as far as what game is going to get flexed into the Sunday night game? Because there's, we kind of talked about it before. Like it feels pretty anticlimactic going into the final week. So it's like, what do? Do they flex Minnesota Green Bay in because it's for the division title, even though, both teams are going to be in the playoffs and they're likely going to play each other the next week in the playoffs anyway? Do they go with, say, Philly, Eagles, Giants if Philly beats Washington on Saturday, even though the Giants will likely be eliminated by then?
I will say, I do believe I saw that the Eagles can't do it because they've been in too many primetime games this year.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. The Eagles have maxed out their prime time. So there you go. That's another reason. So it's like, what does the NFL do?
Yeah, it's really weird. Really going to be an interesting decision. For week 17, I hope that they go Packers, Vikings, but I mean, really depends on the outcome this week. And if there's chaos this weekend, then all of a sudden, week 17 could be really fun.
It's possible, yeah. But yeah, I think right now the best bet is Minnesota Green Bay. I don't think those teams have maxed out their primetime appearances. I mean, the team we'd be looking at is probably Green Bay, because I'm pretty sure we have. Well, the Vikings were the Monday night game week 1, and then now they're going to be the Sunday night game, and they've played the Thursday night game, but I think that was it for them. I think they only have the 3 primetime games so far. But then I'm not sure where Green Bay is, so they might go with that one, because again, a lot of or hell, they may put Carolina in there unless Carolina's maxed out their primetime appearances. They may say, well, Carolina, we'll just put them in there because they're going for 16-0, and
that'd actually be fun. Yeah, actually, I'd actually think that'd be a kind of a cool thing to do. See Jameis Winston in prime time. I'm always down for that.
Yeah, it'd be nice too to give the national audience a little bit of exposure to Winston, and then again the whole storyline of Carolina likely going for for 16-0. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Either one of those games, or they're just going to end up putting a bad team in prime time against the playoff team. I don't know. Monday, this week is going to be very interesting, and then come Monday, we'll find out what game they go with and how they set up the schedule. Because of course they like to set up the schedule, to try to create as much drama as possible, to get the players playing as much as possible. But again, with how anticlimactic Week 17 is shaping up to be, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do as far as setting up the schedule. So with that, any final thoughts, Ian?
Not really. I'm hoping that we get Week 17 to be entertaining, so I'm kind of hoping for a little bit of chaos this weekend. I don't want to just be watching games for draft position Week 17, but
Yeah.
Hey, playoffs are almost here, and I just hope we get good matchups.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it. This time next week, we'll be talking the final week of the regular season and start prepping for the playoffs. It's really, really hard to believe. Ian, Merry Christmas, my friend. It's always fun talking with you, my friend.
Yep, Merry Christmas to you, and hope your family has a wonderful weekend, and we'll touch base again here before the new year.
Absolutely. And by the time we meet up next week, I'll be 25. Yay! My birthday is actually this Friday.
Well, happy early birthday, and I'm sure I'll be wishing you that again here. So if you're listening at home here on Thursday or Friday, mark it on your calendars.
Thanks, bud. And of course, to all the listeners, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all of you guys as well. Enjoy the football this week. Enjoy spending time with your families and whatever traditions you do on Christmas. And hopefully Santa is good to you on Friday morning. So until next time, for my buddy Ian Wharton, I am Bill Rossetti. Thanks so much for listening as always, guys, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Graduates. Take care, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.